Hey guys, welcome back to a different kind of MultiVersus video for today. And it's particularly different since this is post-commentary Matt this time. I know there'll be some MultiVersus gameplay in the background, probably against some bots or something, I don't know. I won't be reacting to anything that happens during that gameplay because of what's going to be going on for this one, so yeah, the gameplay is just going to be for some background entertainment. So usually after I do a character video for a patch in this game, I'd follow it up with a buffed characters video, where I showcase some or all of the buffed characters for a patch and go over what's changed. At this point I've done this twice by now, one after Gizmo and one after Rick. And I would have done the same after Stripe's release. But, seeing as how the patch that gave us Stripe nerfed pretty much everybody except Arya and Garnet in a serious way, I didn't really see it as a worthwhile piece of content, at least for this patch. So I decided to do something a little different this time around, and instead provide my opinions on who I would add to MultiVersus if I had the creative and influential power to do so. There are 5 class types in the game: Bruiser, Tank, Assassin, Mage, and Support, and I'll provide a handful of characters for each category as to who I would add if given the opportunity. That's basically what this video is going to be about. Now, I should stress that at the time of this recording, Black Adam is most likely going to be releasing at some point in the near future. And on top of that, there has been a tweet from the developers that may be alluding to a Wizard of Oz character, probably the Wicked Witch of the West, so I'm not going to be going over either of those in this video. And as far as leaked characters go, per se, I'm likely going to keep discussion of those to an absolute minimum to avoid any he said, she said moments or the like. And of course, I should make the disclaimer, these are only my opinions. I'm not going to make any of this sound like something that should or will happen at any point in the future, and I don't expect anyone else to do the same, be it the devs, fans, or whichever. These are just some first and third party characters that I would find interesting to fit within the MultiVersus model, and that's all. Chances are I might categorize a character differently from what other people would categorize them as, but these are just my opinions and interpretations. And don't worry, just because I don't mention a character you want in this video doesn't mean I'm completely against the idea of it. Everyone has their idea of who they want to see in this game, and these are just mine. Oh, and just one more thing before we get started. It's come to my attention that less than a quarter of the people who regularly tune into my videos are subscribed to the channel, and that's a little awkward. So if you're part of the rough 75% that are not subscribed, I recommend you do, because I'll be trying to put out content on the regular and hopefully reach 1,000 subs before the year is up. We still have a little over 2 months to achieve that after all. Anyway, enough plugging and rambling, it's time we got started here. Bruisers are usually a very straightforward sort of fighter. They're really just there for attack-oriented players by dealing out a lot of hits. They're mainly melee-oriented with a few ranged attacks here and there for the most part, and are usually simplistic. Usually. So, who would I add that fits this bill? Well, as much as I don't want the roster to be oversaturated by Batman characters, I would quite like to see Bane added at some point. We don't exactly have grappler characters in this game right now. The closest to that is the Iron Giant, and that's only for one special move. His Venom could also be a good temporary damage booster, and him being a heavyweight bruiser would prove him to be a powerful asset if used correctly. Another character I would like to see is Ed from Ed, Edd n Eddy. I really enjoyed the show growing up, and there's a lot of potential moveset material for a chaotic set of characters in the Eds. I personally see the Eds working as a trio character akin to Smash's Pokemon trainer, and I would categorize Ed as a strong, chaotic bruiser type, uncaring about most of the carnage around him as he does his own thing. Now, this one's gonna be pretty interesting, so bear with me. But I'd personally see Eustace from Courage the Cowardly Dog as a hilarious addition. Him using his mallet as his primary weapon and, of course, his freaky mask to potentially invoke fear into his enemies would make for some interesting material, to say nothing of anything else that the show could provide him in terms of a moveset. I'll admit it's been a while since I last watched Courage the Cowardly Dog, but I'd imagine that there's something in there that would make it tick. Now, I'm going to go into a few third-party-ish choices here, and I'd like to start with a fellow comics character in Hellboy. I think Injustice 2 really did make an impression of him on me, and I think he'd fit in well with the roster of characters that we've currently got. His guns and his right hand of doom, as well as his demonic visage, would probably bring well to someone who could be a berserker-esque character. And I can imagine his dialogue with other characters being the guy who's seen it all mentality. Another bruiser that I would really love to see, and I also have social media and other modern media to thank for this, is Popeye the Sailor Man. He's essentially Ultra Instinct Shaggy before Ultra Instinct Shaggy, and he would offer a very powerful, wacky, off-the-wall sort of potential for the game. Hell, even the Popeye Twitter account got in on acknowledging MultiVersus, so it'd be pretty hilarious seeing this super strong spinach muncher join the ranks for real. You hear that, Shaggy mains? You're not safe anywhere. Now, I'm not sure if this one would qualify as a bruiser or a tank, so I'll just throw him in here. But I feel like Jason Voorhees from the Friday the 13th series would provide an interesting character, being someone who could give as good as he gets and armor through several attacks with his implacable nature at the cost of low mobility both on and off stage. There's a lot of those movies out there, so I'd imagine there'd be more than enough material for someone like Jason to use, even if he is a fairly simplistic character. And this will be my last bruiser suggestion, but how about Lion-O from Thundercats? The hammy, campy nature of the original show would provide some funny dialogue interactions, and I would imagine that there's a fair amount of material to use for a moveset, primarily in the Sword of Omens. If memory serves, Thundercats crossed over with DC before, so there's some previous establishing links that would give them a good passageway into MultiVersus. Tanks are also fairly straightforward fighter types, being characters that specialize in taking a lot of hits, sometimes giving as good as they get, usually falling short in either mobility or frame data to compensate. At the time of this recording, there are only 3 tanks in the game: Superman, Wonder Woman, and the Iron Giant, so it would be good to increase the rank of tanks in the game. And I can think of a few good candidates across the board, both first and third party, that would fit the bill. One character that I think would work well for this is Lex Luthor, arch-nemesis of Superman. Given his big ol' power suit, I think that he'd be a good character for ranged attacks in particular. Plus, we don't have a lot of villains in the ranks at the time of recording. With a variety of weapons, kryptonite and otherwise, I see him being a good middle ground between Superman and the Iron Giant. In a similar vein, Darkseid would also be a very good villainous tank. I imagine that he could cause a lot of chaos with his Omega Beams, being incredibly unpredictable, and he could also use Parademons to assist him and Boom Tubes to transport himself and his allies around the battlefield. Solving the problem of few villains and few tanks makes Darkseid, as well as the previous example Lex, solve 2 problems at once. Now, I'm not sure if Tom and Jerry will get another rep in MultiVersus, but on the unlikely chance that it happens, I would imagine that the Bulldog character Spike would be an interesting addition. He proves to be a more brute force-ish character that Tom needed trickery to get the better of on occasion, but I would imagine that there's enough material across the series' history, since it has run for a long time, to provide enough of a moveset, likely as a strong but brutish character to contrast the weaker but more setup-oriented Tom and Jerry. Okay, so there are currently 2 Looney Tunes characters in the game at the moment, Bugs Bunny and Taz, and I imagine that this will change as time goes on, but there's one in Bruiser and one in Mage. So I'm going to assign a Looney Tunes character to the tank role, and my vote for that would be on Foghorn Leghorn. Not only would his dialogue be pretty entertaining to listen to, but I'd imagine that there's a lot of things in this arsenal to justify providing him a space, being one of the major Looney Tunes characters over the years. For example, did you know he has a shotgun on the regular? Imagine him tearing up the likes of Black Adam, Harley Quinn, and the Iron Giant with that. Wouldn't that be something? Now, remember when I brought up Lion-O as a potential bruiser? Well, in a similar vein, how about He-Man as a potential tank? Like Lion-O, I believe he too has crossed over with DC properties, a number of times in fact, and his array of wild feats of strength would provide him a good moveset to work with. Like with Jason, I'm not entirely sure if He-Man would qualify more as a bruiser or a tank, but I would imagine that he could take a lot of hits at once. I mean, just look at the guy. So I'd assign him the tank role. Another tank that I'd personally want, and bear with me here, is the Heavy from Team Fortress 2. I know, look, just bear with me here. If you know me for long enough, or if you've watched my Smashdown video earlier in the year, you'd know that I'm an advocate for Heavy getting into the next Smash Bros game, if there ever is one in the foreseeable future. But getting the Heavy in MultiVersus would be a good compromise. TF2 has a fair few DC references across the board, mainly the Arkham Knight community contest, and the art style of MultiVersus would allow the Heavy to blend in seamlessly. Plus, MultiVersus is available on Steam, so accessibility is no issue there. As such, Heavy being a good attacking tank while being low on mobility would be very fair to the character. I even made an entire Twitter thread about this, which I'll link in the description below. Now, these next two are less likely, and this one is maybe not likely to occur at all, but I would imagine it being funny, and that's a particular big DreamWorks character, one known across the internet for such a notorious movie series. You know who it is. That's right, Po from Kung Fu Panda. Being a Kung Fu movie, Po would be a very good character for dealing and taking a lot of hits, and possibly even using his bulk to power through or even counter enemy attacks. He would fit into the MultiVersus style very well, and his fighting style would be something fascinating to visualize, both in the martial arts sense and in Po's improvised techniques, and all which implies. The last tank that I would nominate in this role is none other than Detroit's metal-clad crime solver, RoboCop. Much like Heavy, I feel like RoboCop would be able to take a lot of hits while providing a mixture of close and long-range attacks with his gun and other tools, while also being weak mobility-wise. Despite being fairly simplistic, with him appearing in Mortal Kombat 11, I'd imagine that there is a mixture of good material to work with to make him a good defensive-oriented fighter. Yes, even the stupid jetpack. This is where things start to get a little more complicated. Assassins can vary depending on how exactly they function, but for the most part they seem to be weaker characters that rely on a mixture of speed and combos to make up for their frailty, which was more pronounced when they took more damage originally. Some of these characters also tend to be a lot more technical than the likes of bruisers and tanks as well. Now, the first of the assassin types that I'd like to bring forward is none other than DC's resident speedster, the Flash. This would prove to be an interesting addition due to how fast he is, and given the discourse in Smash around Sonic, it would be very interesting to see how he would be handled in MultiVersus. He'd likely be very fast and very combo-driven, but likely dealing very little damage in return. Or potentially using damage to charge up Speed Force stuff to become super fast, maybe? I don't know. In a similar vein, I'd like to see Reverse Flash as well. It just seems right for a multiverse-affecting incident like the story that MultiVersus seems to be going for to involve someone that runs around through the time stream screwing things up, such as Eobard Thawne himself. I didn't really know whether to bundle him up as a skin for the Flash or if he should be his own character, but either way, I'd love to see him. If only to be a dick to everybody else. Now, in the vein of the Halloween season, I thought I'd offer a take on a spooky character. Grim, from the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy. There have been some rumblings of Spinell from Steven Universe joining the roster due to a picture the devs tweeted out at some point, and chances are that'll occur at some point in the future. But this is also a good scythe wielder option too. Also, I just love the sound of Grim's voice, don't you? Who wouldn't want his level of charm in the game? Now, to follow up on the Bruiser Ed from earlier, I'm going to provide the second of the Ed's trio here, to which I'll assign Eddie to the Assassin's role. His speedy, conniving, and sneaky nature just seems to owe so well to an assassin playstyle. While not as much of a direct physical force as Ed, he's used a lot of makeshift gadgetry to gain the upper hand throughout the series. Maybe he'd scam other opponents for quarters? Who knows? Either way, he'd be very fast and likely would owe well to a combo game, which would likely be a very good character for someone like Eddie. Speaking of speedy fighters, I could probably see Samurai Jack working in the style of MultiVersus too. Not only would he be simple in design, but his arc of being trapped in the future and needing to get back to the past would surely blend in with a multiversal issue, which could lead to some interesting dialogue options and scenarios. With his swordplay skills and high mobility due to his ability to, jump good, he could prove to be a potent threat as an assassin-type character. Now, I feel like this is going to probably happen sooner or later, but either Scorpion or Sub-Zero, or possibly both, would fit well into the game. I'm sure that there's a whole bunch of story stuff to justify this occurring, mainly their appearances in the Injustice series, but I feel like they'd also act the same way the fighting game characters in Smash also work, having a set of basic input moves, while also having classic combos for certain inputs, like in their arcade games. Even if they lack their classic fatalities from Mortal Kombat, chances are they'd still fit in just fine. Maybe. This last assassin is one that I doubt will happen, but I'd be very on board if it does happen, and that would be none other than Agent 007 himself, James Bond. While he would likely be a basic assassin on the surface, having martial arts moves and his classic guns, chances are he'd also be packing some of his iconic gadgets from across the 007 series to be useful for combos. Hell, if you want to take it even further, you could also give Bond a rage meter like the Iron Giants for his tricked out Aston Martin to deal extra damage. I know I'd love to leave some characters in this game shaken, not stirred. Mages are very tricky characters. Also known as ranged characters, they are typically specializing in ranged attacks, debuffs, and trap setups to get the most out of their kit. As a result, they tend to be a lot more complex than, say, bruisers or tanks. Like with tanks, there are only 3 mages in the game at the time of recording: Bugs Bunny, Tom and Jerry, and Rick. While I did struggle to compile a set of compatible mages, I've managed to come up with a few that could conceivably fit in the role. And I know I'm not going to start this off strongly, but I think Green Arrow would be, at the very least, a funny addition. I know that there were some rumblings of a bow fighter at some point, which some thought pointed to Legolas, but I think it was ultimately pointing to Gizmo. I know it's entirely possible that Green Arrow could qualify as a support character as well, it's a little up in the air on that, but his assortment of trick arrows could provide with several types of debuffs or the like, and would be a powerful character at long range, but would likely be a struggler at close quarters. Alright, here's one that might be received a little better. How about Dr. Fate? I know, I'm mostly saying this just because of his appearance in Injustice 2, but he could do a lot with his various forms of magic. He could be a flying character like Superman, he could reflect projectiles, or perhaps provide debuffs to opponents or buffs to allies. Being a long-runner superhero, there is likely a lot of potential with someone like Dr. Fate, depending on which variations of the character they go with. Okay, this will be the last DC mage I'll suggest, and admittedly this is a bit of a stretch, but I would assign Deathstroke to the mage class, only by virtue of having a lot of ranged potential. His uses of guns would provide him with ranged threat that could work with him targeting certain opponents with melee attacks and then following up with said guns, same as how Stripe handles. But he'd likely have a more even split of melee and ranged attacks, most likely his ranged weapons being closer to his specials. Right, let's move away from DC now. Let's try somewhere else, such as Looney Tunes. And someone that I think is long overdue for his time in the game is none other than, well, you know, Daffy Duck. Being a counterpart to Bugs while still having a large array of antics and unpredictable elements about him, I still think he'd fall under the mage category just like Bugs. I'm not too familiar with Looney Tunes, but given that Bugs and Daffy are effectively the frontrunners of the franchise, it only makes sense to bring him into the fray. I know you've been thinking about the Eds since I've been doing them out of order, but this is where I assigned the last of the Eds a role, and that being Double D for the Mage role. I was debating about putting him in either the Mage or support role, but I ultimately figured that Mage would fit in best. While I doubt that he'd be impressive at all with close-range combat, he'd be able to make up for it with an array of makeshift gadgets to help himself and his allies. Maybe he'd be a mixture of Mage and support? Who knows? And for the last Mage I can think of, and this is more for the sense of the in-jokes between me and my circle of friends more than anything else, but one can only imagine what Dexter from Dexter's Laboratory would be like in this game. Much like Double D, I'd imagine that he wouldn't be too much to write home about in close range, unless there's something that allows him to be a close range threat. It's been a while since I've watched the series. He would likely be a major threat with setups and mechanical traps, making him a character that's hard to master, but rewarding if it's achieved. Last but not least, support characters are characters that are less oriented about direct combat and more about providing buffs to allies or debuffs to enemies, or just helping them out in any general way. These are the sort of characters that excel more in 2v2s as opposed to 1v1s or free-for-alls. While the beta run of MultiVersus provided one new support character in Gizmo, there's still only Steven Universe, Velma, and the original generation Raindog to line him up with. So support characters could do with some supplementing, and I've got a few suggestions to remedy this. One of them is, more predictably, Green Lantern. Regardless of which one they use, most likely Hal Jordan, but there are others that could be used as possible variants, I see the Green Lantern being useful as a support character that uses Construct to ensnare and attack enemies, or possibly provide defensive buffs to allies. It's possible you could see Green Lantern as a mage instead, but support also seems fitting. There was a brief glimpse of a Green Lantern charging thing in the MultiVersus trailer, so it's entirely possible that this may happen in the future. Maybe. We'll see. Another DC pick, probably less predictably, is one that you probably wouldn't even associate with a fighting environment. Scarecrow. I'm not even joking. Maybe it's just his portrayal in Injustice 2 that's left such an impression on me, but I feel like something of the sort would work well as a supporting character, with his Fear Toxin being useful as a debuff tool against enemies, or possibly even invoking fear to prevent them from attacking. It might be something that could prove as a life-saving thing for allies at high damage. It's the spooky season, and I like Scarecrow's character, so why not? Maybe we'd even find out about the roster's fears. Now, what about this? I could imagine Elmer Fudd of Looney Tunes being a worthy support character, especially being an on-off enemy of Bugs Bunny. While his main shtick is his gun, he also has a lot of other antics that could supplement his kit, especially in the later cartoons that for some reason did away with his rifle. Sure, I doubt he'd be the best at dealing damage, but he could help supplement his allies' attacks with more ranged abilities. In a similar vein, I think it'd be funny to bring Fred from Scooby-Doo into the fray to supplement Shaggy and Velma. While I imagine Scooby-Doo would probably be added over Fred, I just think Fred bringing a large array of makeshift traps to help support his allies would be just too much of a funny thing to pass up. To say nothing of if Fred manages to unmask enemies, similar to Velma summoning the Mystery Machine to take foes away. Don't look into it too deeply, okay? Now, remember when I brought up Eustace as a bruiser earlier in this video? Well, naturally, I can't do that without bringing up the Pink Mutt himself, Courage, as a support-type character. I can see him somewhat being like Velma, since he's likely to be fast and may be able to pick up allies and carry them away from danger. Again, I'll admit that it's been a while since I've last watched his series, but looking up a little bit shows that his kit is strangely versatile, so I'd imagine that there's a lot that he could do to be a good support character. Now, this one's a bit more out there, but one that I'd personally love to see, if only for his dialogue, is Dick Dastardly from Wacky Races. He might not be able to use the Mean Machine for anything, unless he has a rage meter akin to the James Bond example from earlier, but his assortment of trap-making skills would make him some sort of funny support character akin to the Fred example. Hell, he could even have Medley as an assist character of sorts. The things he could do could make up for his frailty, and it would just be funny to see him interact with people, wouldn't you think? Last but not least, here's a throwaway character that I think would be hilarious nonetheless. Inspector Gadget. And yes, I may only want this due to a tweet I saw of Gadget doing Akuma's Raging Demon, and I would absolutely love it if he received that in the same way that Shaggy received his Ultra Instinct. But I figured that he would be a funny support character anyway, with his assortment of gadgets and his extendo limbs giving him good reach. It would make him such a funny addition to beat up comic book and cartoon juggernauts as. Just imagine. That's all that can be done, right? And there we go. That's all of the options I have to offer for who I would add to a MultiVersus if given the opportunity. I know it's a little different from what I usually do. I haven't done anything akin to this since the Smashdown video, but I figured it'd do well to pad out some time before Black Adam drops without having to do a buffed characters video. Feel free to let me know if you agree with my choices, if you disagree, or maybe even comment on who you would add to the game if you were given the ability to. Anyway, I'm going to end it here, so throw us a like if you've enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on the next video I do. Take care now.